Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast, the Group of Five Deep Dive. I'm your co-host, Mike Calabrese, and the Jared Zabransky to my Chucky Keaton, of course, referring to Mike Ianniello here for the Mountain West preview. We are also joined by the incomparable Collin Wilson from the Action Network as well. We're going to get into everything Mountain West here. It's the last ride with the Mountain and the West divisions. Next year, they're going to just the top two teams. But this is the last time we get to be a little bit strategic as we go through our season preview. Guys, how you doing? Collin, I know you're always on the move. Let's start with you.
Yeah, I'm doing great, guys. This is obviously, I said the Sun Belt was my favorite conference, but they don't have San Diego State. I will bet a San Diego State over every single weekend just to see if they can get 19 points on the board. If you have not bet a live total over 17.5 points on San Diego State, you are not living life the right way.
Ianniello, do you agree, or are you looking for a little more spice in your life than the San Diego State Aztec offense?
Well, first, I just want to say I love our new segment of Where in the World is Collin Wilson. I think he should be required to be somewhere different each episode. But I don't want to spoil anything later on in the show. But, Collin, this might be the first year your San Diego State over is actually hit. So this is a big year for you.
All right. Why don't we jump into the action here? We got lots of teams to discuss. There's been a ton of movement in the transfer portal in this particular conference. So there's, that first week for most casual fans when they turn the games on, they are not going to see the familiar faces from the 2021 season. In a lot of cases, they're going to see guys they think should be on Nevada that are actually in Colorado State. We'll get to that in just a moment. Starting in the Mountain Division, the favorites here at plus 225 to win the Mountain West, 8.5 wins for their win total, referring, of course, to the Boise State Broncos. S&P Plus has them pretty split in terms of a quality defense, 14th for their projection. They returned 9 starters on that side of the ball, 72nd offensively. And Tim Plow, he was a rising star coming out of the FCS ranks. There was a lot of optimism that he'd get this offense cooking to the old Boise State ways. But last year, the offensive line did not hold up. Bachmeier was under pressure constantly. Helani gets hurt. Now they get to do a refresh. They bring back 2 all Mountain West Conference linemen. They have some solid depth there. They bring in a Washington State transfer to potentially play left tackle. Helani is healthy again, at least to start the season. But they're going to have to do a lot on the perimeter. Aside from Cobbs, they lose Khalil Shaker. And this year, it doesn't start easy for them. 3 of their first 4 are on the road. They open in Corvallis against Oregon State, then New Mexico, UT Martin, and UTEP. When I look back on the team last year before I kick it to you guys, it was interesting to me that, the perception was it was a huge step back for Boise State. Andy Avalos, couldn't rekindle the magic that so many of the coaches had been passing the baton from years past. But 5-point loss to UCF, 1-point loss to Oklahoma State, 10-point loss to Nevada. That was really the only time all season that they were fully outclassed. Air Force by a touchdown, San Diego State by 9. You could probably see 1 or 2 of those games going in their direction. Their bowl game gets canceled. So I think for as powerful a brand as they are in the Mountain West, I think they're kind of laying in the weeds here. What are your thoughts on the Broncos going into this season? Is this a team you're buying on to get things right offensively, Collin?
Boise State is priced properly. So, I'm not going to have a play on their over-under. I make it 9.2. I think SP Plus makes it 9.4. So you would think that you want to take the over. The reason why I'm laying off of this number is because this is the toughest schedule of offenses per SP Plus. You just dump the schedule, look at the offenses, get the average. This is the toughest offensive schedule of any team in the Mountain West. So for me, Boise is a no play, and they've got to get something going on offense. I'm glad they have all their offensive line back, so I'll be watching closely.
Ianniello, are you any more bullish on them? I know Bachmeier is not someone that really gets your chili running hot, so maybe if they had a different option there, you'd be more bullish on the boys on the Smurf turf?
Yeah, I don't think they win the division. I don't, and I'll talk about who I think does later. But like you said, I think the defense should be fine. They were nasty last year. They returned a ton. Their pass rush should be really good once again. Secondary's loaded. The defense will not be the issue. It's the offense. This low key might be super insulting. Their offense reminds me a lot of that like 2012 Penn State offense where Matt McGloin would just throw up reckless bombs, but Allen Robinson caught them every time. And you're like, wow, this offense looks pretty good. They score a lot of touchdowns. Well, Khalil Shakir is gone, and I think Bachmeier is going to be in trouble without him. He had more than double the receptions and yards than any other receiver on this team. The other big issue, I know Colin loves talking about the offensive line. he gets hit a ton. Their offensive line gives up a ton of hits. And Bachmeier's had health issues. He usually plays through injury, so he's always just limping for some reason. George Holani, he's had injury issues. He's missed like 12 games in the last 2 years. I just don't trust the offense. So I don't think you can win their division with how bad their offense is. I don't trust Bachmeier at all.
I think it's important to couch this isn't necessarily our thought on the team, more so in vis-a-vis their current price. So I think we're all in agreement here at plus 225. I don't want to tie up my money for the whole season for a team that needs a lot of things to go right to rewrite their kind of history offensively, coming off one of their worst offensive seasons in the last 25 years, dating all the way back to their transition to big boy football at the Division 1A level. All right, let's transition quickly to a team that I'm more bullish on. And this is kind of on my college football bucket list. When I went through, it was last summer, there's a few things I wanted to see. I wanted to see a group of 5 team make the playoff. That happens. I'd love to see a defensive player win the Heisman Trophy. No one's really put a serious run into that. I mean, if Will Anderson can't get serious consideration last year, I'm not sure who can. Another one that I've added to the list, I would love to see a service academy put the fear of God into the playoff committee, go undefeated, put them in an uncomfortable situation in late November with quality wins to say, do we have to take Air Force seriously? Because I am taking Air Force seriously right now. 5-1 to win the Mountain West, 8.5 wins as their win total. SP Plus, unsurprisingly, not all that impressed with what they're bringing back because it's a service academy, 69th offensive efficiency, 61st on the defensive side of the ball. But for my money, this could be, if everything breaks right, because they have so many returning starters, one of the best Air Force teams maybe since 85. Look at the 98 team that went 12-1. When you return a quarterback, Zeke Daniels, leading rusher, Brad Roberts, who I think he had 300 carries last year, talk about being a bell cow. He was somebody who was so physical and allowed their guys on the perimeter when they were going off of that dive to really make some hay. 4/5 of the offensive line return, 8 of 11 defensive starters. And this is a defense last year. I understand they're buoyed by an offense that eats up the clock. So every single stop is more meaningful in terms of yardage, but they're 5th in total defense, 9th against the run, 18th in sacks. And the key for them, and this is really the high variance point for any service academy offense, only 10 giveaways the whole season. If they get close within like 2 or 3 of that to the same amount of giveaways this year, I think they're going to flirt with an undefeated regular season. They got UNI in the non-conference, and that's Northern Iowa. They got Colorado at home. They avoid Fresno. They get Boise State at home. I'm just all in on the Falcons here. Does anyone want to throw cold water on my pick?
No, there's no way I'm throwing cold water on it, but I do think that there's a better betting angle than the other. So let me go ahead and start off by saying, they returned 70% of their offense back. They were second in the nation in havoc allowed, which means they didn't have tackles for loss. They didn't fumble the ball. A lot of that is, they're a service academy team. that's just the way that they run. I am extremely bullish on these guys. My projected number is 9.9 for a win total that's at 8.5. SP Plus is about 9.1. And a lot of this goes to, what they return on both sides of the ball with, 94% of the rushing yards are back with Brad Roberts and Zeke Daniels. And, I think the biggest question is if the defense takes a step back with 58% of their tackles and their passes defense return. I mean, that's almost been chopped in half. But they did post top 25 numbers in all the 5 factors that's important. But here's the reason I like the win total over 8.5 more than I like the conference. And that is because, listen, they don't play Fresno from the West. That's great. That's something that you have to handicap. But they do end the season with San Diego State. They have a revenge game with Utah State that they lost last year. The problem is that game comes after Navy. And if you look at Air Force's, history, they've lost 3 of their last 4 the week after they've played Navy. Are you really up for Utah State and thinking that's a revenge game when you're coming off of a service academy game? So for that, it could be a little tiebreaker action going on there. I feel much more comfortable with an over 8.5 than I do on the entire Mountain West.
Ianniello, what are your thoughts on the Falcons?
I love them. I love their over. I don't know that I'm going to play them to win the Mountain West, but I actually do like them to win the division, which I believe is plus 200 at DraftKings. Shop around, see if you can find that better. But this is why I don't like Boise to be in the conference title game, because I think it's going to be Air Force. For everything you said, Zeke Daniels, Brad Roberts, this offense is going to hum just like it did last year. The defense, they lose Trey Buggs, they lose DeMonte Meeks. Those are big pieces, but I'm not super worried about the defense. I think service academies, I feel like, I don't know if Collin feels this way, but I always feel like returning production matters kind of the least to service academies because they're just going to plug in like a 24-year-old and be fine. especially on defense. And you mentioned it, it's the schedule. It's, I know this doesn't count towards going to the conference title, but the non-con is super easy. They get Navy at home. They get Army in Texas, so they don't have play a service academy on the road all year. They get Boise State at home. You mentioned they avoid Fresno until the conference title game, which is why I'm not taking them to win it. But I do love the over, and I do love them to win the division. I'm all in on the Falcons.
Yeah, and one thing I forgot to mention is when I said that Boise State has the hardest schedule of offenses, Air Force has the easiest schedule of offenses of anybody in the Mountain West. Average SP plus ranking of the offenses on their schedule, 106th. So I'm not really worried about the Air Force defense at all.
I think you heard it right there. That encapsulates, our passion for the over on this one. So we'll book that as one of our best bets here right out of the gate. Transitioning to another team that was really a surprise down the stretch, as Ianniello mentioned at the top, Utah State plus 750 to win the Mountain West here, 6.5 wins, minus 140 to the over, 73rd in their S&P plus projection on offense, 107th on defense. Listen, these guys went 11-3 last year. They bring back Logan Bonner. Obviously, they need to replace Tompkins, but Anderson has been kind of a miracle worker. And the fact that he brings in talented transfers, particularly at wide receiver, brings in Brian Cobbs from Maryland and Xavier Williams from Alabama. I believe in Blake. So I think he's going to be able to keep this team above that 6-win threshold. I would actually be surprised if they were at 6-6 or worse. So I think that's why it's juiced in this way. Minus 140 is kind of punitive, but I'm probably going to go with the over here. And that's it. Like, obviously the defense has a lot of holes. There's going to be some issues in terms of replacing what they lost last season, but this is a team that played really well down the stretch, save for that really weird rivalry game against Wyoming where they just didn't show up. But all the way through their bowl game, they beat a quality Oregon State team. So I'm surprised that this win total is set here. I get it. They play at Alabama. They play at BYU. Let's just talk those up as 2 losses. They also get UConn and Weber State in the non-conference. So that's 2-2 right there. I don't necessarily see that as, they're going to get physically beat up so badly by those 2 top 25 teams that it's going to have a lingering effect on their season. Ianniello, what do you think about Utah State? Were you surprised to see 6.5 as the number?
I was surprised. I definitely think the regression monster is coming for them. They're one of those teams that they'd win a lot of games, and you're like, how the hell did they win that game? They were good, but very lucky. And I don't want to say, sometimes saying they were lucky almost comes off as an insult. I think Blake Anderson is a phenomenal coach. I think guys love him. You saw it at Arkansas State. You saw it as soon as he came to Utah State, how many guys followed him here. Obviously he's got a great story, the battling for his wife and stuff like that. So I do think they're well coached, and that contributes to the luck, but they were very lucky. And I think that's coming down to earth. I'm with you. I don't think it comes down that hard. I think they're a bold team, especially with Logan Bonner back. He was with them at Arkansas State. So this is his 3rd or 4th year in Anderson's system. They got Levi Williams transferred over too, so that will help. If just in case something happens, Calvin Tyler's still there. I'll probably not play it, but I think you're on the right side with the over. I don't think they fall off that much.
Yeah, talking about Blake Anderson, high tempo, 11th in the nation, 23 seconds per play. He moves even faster off the field if you keep up with that kind of stuff. Listen, this whole season is a story in 3 parts, right? We've got a really bookended 2 easy games around Alabama. There's 2 byes on this schedule. The middle part of the schedule is absolutely brutal with 3 road games that include BYU, Colorado State. Air Force is sandwiched in between that. And then they get another bye week, and they end the season, New Mexico, Hawaii, San Jose State, and then Boise State. So really, this schedule comes in 3 parts. Now, my question about Blake Anderson's system is he going to catch any defensive coordinators in the Mountain West by surprise like they did last year? If you've got a defensive line that can rush 3 and drop 8, you're going to give him a lot of issues. I actually project this at 5.9. I this number, I've seen 7 out there, juiced at 7. I've seen the 6.5 out there. It's tough because you don't know what the injury status is going to be when you have an at Alabama, when you have an at BYU and an Air Force. I mean, that's going to take a toll on some of your guys. And, listen, talk about that BYU game, right? Are you going to scrap plans for that BYU game and head just straight into prep for the triple option against Air Force? One of those games are going to get blown out pretty bad. And when we talk about regression, 2nd order win total is a really big deal when you're doing win totals for the following season. And that means how lucky were you the year before? They won 3 games last year by 4 points or less. I think regression is big time coming for them. I think these defensive coordinators get to lick their chops and take a shot at this. And so I'm going to say under here, under on the 7. I'm going to disagree with Calabrese here.
All right, I'll remove my rose-colored glasses for the Aggies and look at a team that I think I could argue for or against, high school mock debate style. Colorado State coming in 50-1 to win the Mountain West here, 6 wins as their win total, 118th as their projection on offense, just because there's so many new faces there, 50th for their defensive efficiency projection for S&P Plus. Listen, Jay Norvell arrives with 7 transfers in his back pocket from Nevada, most notably Clay Millen, a former 4-star recruit, but he has, limited experience, is putting it kindly. Torrey Horton, Melquan Stovall, and Ty McCulloch, yes. Dante Wright. This receiving core has all the makings of being the deepest receiving core in the Mountain West. So if Millen turns out to be the hyped, high school phenom that he's supposed to be, at least by G5 standards, I think you could really see some things happening. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm just hearing they have 0 returning starters in the offensive line. So only one other team nationally that is going to pull that off, and it's Virginia, and they have a mobile quarterback, so Brennan Armstrong can run for his life all season long in the ACC. 0 returning starters in the O-line with a redshirt freshman quarterback. All right, I'm starting to reel back the enthusiasm a little bit here. You also look at Michigan and Wazoo in the non-conference. I think they're going to get beat up there. But this is a team I'm putting in my back pocket. If they do have a rough September, if Michigan and Wazoo lay big numbers on them and they can't compete, Nevada on October 8th, that's my bounce back game for them. And obviously going to be a rivalry renewed there with Norvell's departure and everything else that went down. Colorado State may be the most interesting team, maybe not for good reasons. This is a stay away for me. You guys have a play in either direction.
I'm staying.
Yeah, I'll go first. I'll go first, and I'll just say I wish odds makers would put up a Colorado State Nevada game in the year, because Colorado State will be coming off of a bye week, and that is Jay Norvell returning. When we talk about regression coming up against Utah State and how it's going to hit them this year, it's the opposite for Colorado State. They lost 3 games by 5 points or less last year, but they just need way too much improvement with the offensive line. They were 115th in offensive finishing drives. I know it's a new coach. I know it's a new regime. I know the transfer portal's there. But, there's just too much change. This was a great number at 5 or less. At 5.5, you can't take it, because look at the home wins. Middle Tennessee, Sacramento State, Hawaii, Wyoming, New Mexico. That's 5. At 5.5, you can't play it. I don't think you can get to 6. It's too much trouble, so I'm going to pass.
Yeah, there's just too much uncertainty. Like you said, Clay Millen has virtually no experience. They lose their leading rusher, leading receiver. I agree with you. I like what they did in the receiver portal, but it's still all new guys. Norvell's bringing in his air raid system. They're switching to a 4-2-5 defense. So they're kind of revamping the entire system. No offensive line. So I'm out. I don't say I'm out on them, but they're definitely a wait and see. Like you said, I think I'll be on them for sure against Nevada. And then they're, let's see if they get frisky late in the year. But yeah, I got nothing for Colorado State.
I think what the way that you play Colorado State this year is that you let them get their heads pounded in September against Michigan and Washington State. You let their power rating fall, and you let the world think that they're garbage. When they come off the bye against Nevada, you just hammer them.
Yep.
All right, speaking of the transfer portal, let's talk Wyoming. They're 50-1 to win the Mountain West, 5 wins as their win total, 119th projection on offense, 78th on defense. The portal giveth, it taketh away, it took away from the Pokes. Wyoming was just decimated in the offseason. Titus Swen is the only thing they have left. They have 2 returning starters in the offensive line. His backfield mate, Valladay, transfers to Arizona State. I think there's a good chance from a college fantasy perspective, he could be one of those diamonds in the rough, but they're just going to ride him until the wheels come off. And only 5 returning starters on defense. They were great against the pass last year, but they need to replace both starting cornerbacks. Just everywhere I look, it looks like bad news. New quarterback, lots of issues here. Craig Bowl has been so steady for them in the 8 years that he's been in Laramie, but I think this is one I'm going to play under. I'm surprised that they're actually 119th in projection on offense. I think it could be so ugly this year for the Cowboys. Collin, do you think there's any reasons other than what I listed off to maybe view this in a more optimistic light, or am I being rightfully pessimistic here?
No, you're rightfully pessimistic. By the way, anybody can turn on a podcast mic and say, well, this team has a transfer player from Wyoming. It seems like this entire roster depleted and spread out across of all FBS. So you would be wrong by saying that on a podcast. This is a no play. I lean to the under 5 here. It's juiced to -125. I don't like laying -125 for an entire season unless I really feel good about it. I think the one thing I'll say about Wyoming is they're in their third year of their defensive coordinator, Jay Sauvel, and they have gone down in defensive havoc every single season. 115th in defensive havoc last year. It's going the wrong direction. I'm not sure what's going on, with the Craig Bowl era, the campaign. I'm not sure how much longer he's going to be there unless they, start competing for conference championships, and it ain't going to happen this year.
Any thoughts here, Ianniello, on the Pokes?
Love the
feel free to punt.
I love the under. I love it. It might be my best bet in the whole conference. This team is going to be so bad. And I know I was joking with you earlier. They're a big time, I know Collin's the numbers guy. We have him on because he's way smarter than me. The vibes are just so bad with Wyoming because it's not just that guys left for the portal. It's easy to say, okay, Isaiah Nayer had a great year. He went to Texas to play in Sark's offense, try to be an NFL prospect. Makes sense. Zayden Holiday. I mean, do you want to go to Arizona State right now? But also, okay, it's Power 5. Kind of makes sense. Their starting quarterback left to go to Montana State. And then Levi Williams had one good game and was like, I'd rather be the backup at Utah State than stay here another moment. So they the fact that it has Hawaii vibes. I don't know what Craig Bohl's doing, but the fact that every single player on this team was like, I don't want to play here is a huge red flag. So to me, this has nothing to do with numbers and projections. There's something going on in Wyoming that people don't want to be there, and I am hammering the over. They won even last year. They won their first 4 games, and then just tanked. They were so bad down the stretch. The vibes are really bad in Wyoming, and I'm hammering the under.
All right, Pokes fans, if you're listening, if you feel like we're piling on, don't worry. Just in time, here comes the preview of New Mexico. 100 to 1 to win the Mountain West. 2.5 wins. 131st in their offensive projection, which I think is too high, 74th on defense. They scored in the year of our Lord 2021 12.2 points per game. They scored fewer than 2 touchdowns in every 60-minute game that they played in last season. They played 6 different quarterbacks. Nathaniel Jones, God bless him, for some reason he signed on the dotted line with the Lobos. He wanted to be in the land of enchantment where anything could happen. He's the 3rd highest recruit in program history. For some reason, maybe someone didn't read to him the fine print of the transfer portal. You can just leave and go wherever you want, start a whole new life, be happy in a winning program. He decided to stay. That's all they got. If Maine beats them in the opener, and Maine is basically, by FCS standards, they're fine. They're like a team that wins 6 or 7 games a year. Sometimes they pop up to 8 or 9. They'll probably be a 7-5 team this year. Maine's got a puncher's chance. If they beat them in this opener, New Mexico is going to go winless this year. And maybe they should just shut the whole program down, go Tarleton State style, go to a lower level of football. This is the worst team. This was my pick of the year last year. I picked Boise State to cover, I believe it was 28 points as a favorite against them last year. Boise won 37-0. It was such a joy to bet against an offense that incompetent. They have no reason for optimism this year. 2.5, I'm going to go the under just because it's very rare I bet an under on a team this low. And I know that a lot of us got burned last year by Louisiana Monroe. I'm going to go back to the well. I'm going under on the Lobos here. What do you think, Collin?
100% with you. I was at Big Ten Media Days getting the prep going in for this. And I said, holy cow, I got to get a dime down and going against the Lobos. What is this projection? Tell me if I'm crazy here, but they're going to be favored by 5.5 over Maine. All right. And then you look, what is the only other winnable game on the schedule? New Mexico State. You're not beating New Mexico State. Jerry Kill's got to go in there. We're not going to have an independent podcast, but let me just throw out some love. On the award-winning Action app, I've already taken them against Nevada, taking the 13 points. Go find that number. I think they can win that game outright. And in this game, they shouldn't be an underdog, but they might be a pick or an underdog. They can win this game against New Mexico. You say, Collin, how can this team be this bad? Danny Gonzalez, as a head coach, covered 1 game last year. 1 game. That even the odds makers can't catch up with how bad Danny Gonzalez is doing. I mean, him and Rocky Long, they can coach defense all day. This is the 3rd different offense in their third year. Like they're going to run spread. No, they're going to run power I. No, this year they're going to a diamond, triple, and space. I don't know what the hell it is they're trying to do there. They don't have the personnel. They don't have the pieces. Less than 45% returning on both sides of the ball. 18% of offensive line snaps are back this year. And if you want me to go a little bit farther than that, they were dead last in success rate last year. They were dead last in finishing drives on offense. Find me 3 games on this schedule, right? I understand the ULM, all right? It's easy in the Sun Belt. This isn't the Sun Belt, all right? I understand that last year, but they are god-awful. If UMass is worse than them, put the 2 teams in a bowl. I've got to see it played.
Ianniello, can you match that fire?
I'll take 5.5 points with Maine. This is a good point. I was going to bring up this at the beginning, but you mentioned the Sun Belt, and obviously we just released that one earlier today. This is like the total opposite, where the Sun Belt, I felt like there was, we could make an argument for probably 7 maybe teams to win the Sun Belt. You could make an argument for like 3 teams to win the Mountain West, and the bottom half of the Mountain West is so bad. So there's going to be some juiced win totals throughout the top of this conference, because the bottom half of the Mountain West is so bad. And we'll continue to talk. That'll be the theme of this podcast, is we're just going to continue to be like, this team is horrible.
All right. We're at the halfway mark here. We get, a bit of a palate cleanser. We switch from the Mountain to the West Division. We're looking at good teams again. We're looking at arguably the best team in the Mountain West. That's Fresno State. They're coming in at 2-1, maybe get plus 225. You shop around a little bit. 8.5 wins, minus 140 juice to the over. S&P plus projection 27th offense, 58th on defense. Jeff Tedford's back in the San Joaquin Valley, baby, and he's got Jake Haener, a really talented group of wide receivers, headlined by Jalen Cropper. The defense was decent last year and returns virtually their entire back 7 intact, headlined by Evan Williams at safety. They have a super manageable stretch run at the end: Hawaii, at UNLV, at Nevada, home against Wyoming. That looks pretty nice. So then, honestly, as I'm going through the schedule, I went back to front. Looking at the way that it closes, I start to turn my attention. Could this be the New Year's 6 representative from the G5 class? They open Cal Poly, nice little preseason game, Oregon State, and then they travel to the Coliseum to play USC. I'm not going to say much more because I know you love this team. You love this quarterback, Ianniello. So I want to give you plenty of room to create your own offense here. Tell me why Fresno State's going to win the conference and why they're probably going to be finally the breakthrough Mountain West team for that New Year's 6 bid.
Jake Haener season in full effect. Lock it up. Plus 300 to win the conference. Not the best number. I don't care. I'd play him at plus 100 because they're winning the conference, and winning plus 100 is better than not winning it. I love this team. I don't think we can qualify Jake Haener as the Bailey Zappi Memorial winner, because Zappi we were on when no one knew who he was. Haener's, I would buy a Jake Haener. I might buy a Jake Haener Heisman ticket just for fun. I'm all in on this team. We talked about, their only real loss is Ronnie Rivers, and Jordan Mims pretty much outplayed him down the stretch anyway. Yep. So is it really a loss? He was kind of the backup by the end of the year. Jalen Cropper was second in the conference in receptions. He's probably the best receiver in the whole conference now with Romeo Doubs gone. They bring back Josh Kelly. Evan Williams, probably the best safety in the conference. Their defense was really good last year. You mentioned it. They have a new head coach. Is there any head coach in the country with, less of a question mark than Tedford just stepping into his old team? They finished 9th in the country in passing last year. I think this is going to be one of the best offenses, probably the best offense in the G5, if not one of them. They have a couple of changes on the defensive line, but it doesn't really worry me. I think the rest of this conference, we talked about it, is so bad. If Jake Haener stays healthy, the sky's the limit for this team. I'm all in on the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and I think it's important to go back and look at the Tedford run here when he was here from 2017 to 2019. He went 7-1 against the spread when he was an underdog. He is a great coach when his back is up against the wall. Ianniello said it all. Jordan Mims, when he came on the scene for Ronnie Rivers, it was like, didn't miss a beat, and that's saying something right there. I think over 8.5 is the play for me. I'm not going to go into the conference because I think the number is a little bit too low. It's just one of those things where I'd like a little bit more value, and since I power rated at 9.2, and I believe SP Plus has it at 10.3. I feel much more comfortable with an over 8.5. There's a couple of things on the schedule that, worry me a little bit. We're going to UConn after a bye. That doesn't worry me, but the travel is you come home and then you have to play Boise State on the road again right after that. So there's 3 road games in a row. all the way from home. This is the easiest schedule in college football when it comes to November. Hawaii, UNLV, Nevada, Wyoming. It's not going to be easier than that. So I feel much more comfortable with an over 8.5 than I do taking this odds. And they absolutely should be where they are in the odds market. As far as winning the Mountain West, it's just not a number that I want to get into when I think the win total has a better chance of cashing my ticket.
They're beating USC.
I'm with you guys there. At USC, I would love it just because
over. I'm sorry, Calabrese. I don't mean to listen. I don't care if that number's 77 or 81. When they post Fresno USC, lay it. Don't even think about it on Sunday night. Get in bed with your wife. You say, God damn, the Fresno USC opener came at 77.5. Lay it over.
For reference, Fresno State UCLA last year was 40-37, and Jake Haener was playing on one leg.
And I did call that upset just to give the Group of Five deep dive the juice it deserves. We'll see.
They almost beat Oregon. They almost beat Oregon too.
I know they were right there. All right, let's transition to easily my favorite, what I like to affectionately refer to as half team of the Mountain West. That's San Diego State plus 750 to win the Mountain West Conference. 7.5 wins as their win total, minus 140 on the juice on over. And why do I call them a half team? Well, offensively, S&P plus, they're 117th. Defensively, they're 12th. That is tied for the largest differential in all of college football coming into the season, with second reference this time for the Wahoos of Virginia. So they could be playing in some high-scoring games to flip it around. San Diego State, listen, Braxton Burmeister, he's in at quarterback, a new quarterback for the fourth straight year. Jesse Matthews and Tyrell Shavers, actually a pretty solid 1-2 punch if they get some competent quarterback play. So I'm starting to feel maybe like single digits for the offense, maybe get them into the 90s a little bit. And then defensively, I know Cam Thomas is out on D, but Justice Tavai comes in from Hawaii on the D line. Cooper McDonald comes in from Washington at linebacker, joins an already very experienced defense, and one of my favorite defense coordinators in the entire country, Kurt Maddox. He's going to make it all go. It's going to be very similar defensively. I think teams are going to have a difficult time finishing drives against the Aztecs. I like them over this win total. I just can't do it to myself, being forced emotionally to watch this offense just sputter for the entire year. Maybe Burmeister's the guy, but I watched multiple quarterbacks try to be the guy last year, and none of them really had any success. I know this is one of these sadomasochistic things you like to do to yourself, Collin, just, betting the over live. I know you're going to do the same thing this fall. Where's your optimism going into the season?
Well, the fact that our punt god, Matt Araiza, is no longer with the teams that the offenses are going to face is going to get better field position and a better chance to score. So Collin Wilson is not stopping on betting the over in San Diego State games whatsoever. I think what I'm kind of disappointed in is they're opening up this new Snapdragon Stadium. In case you didn't know, they were always driving over an hour to play home games. But the problem is they're at Boise, they're at Fresno. So they don't get the biggest games that they need at home. They do get UNLV off of a bye week in New Mexico. Whatever they're doing, they're going to hammer them. But listen, Jordan Byrd, kick returner, punt returner, might be one of the best specialists in all of the G5, maybe in the nation. Both sides of the ball are kind of middling on returning production at 62%. I think Burmeister is really why I'm optimistic about taking in-game overs and pre-game overs, because he had 2 years at Oregon, 2 years at Virginia Tech. Last year, he finally figured it out, a 14-4 TD to INT ratio. He had double the number of big-time throws than turnover he plays. He had the highest average depth of target in his career last year at Virginia Tech. I'm kind of bullish on Burmeister, but the problem is I projected 7.2, no play on 7.5, but you can bet you're going to see a lot of Aztecs come to the action app this year.
I feel like I was the resident San Diego State hater last year. I was always down on them. I'll be honest. I love Collin's stock. I rolled my eyes every time Collin started talking about San Diego State over. So I was like, he's gonna throw away his money. He could just Venmo me. He might be onto something this year. I think Burmeister is a massive upgrade over Brookshire and Johnson. Obviously we can look in hindsight and say it was a stupid decision and probably got him fired, but Justin Fuente basically picked Burmeister over Hendon Hooker. And, I think Burmeister wasn't that bad. He threw 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. You mentioned Jesse Matthews and Tyrell Shavers returning. I think this is huge for Tyrell Shavers. When I was going to do my notes this year, I was looking at my notes from last year, and I had Shavers written down last year as a breakout candidate. He really wasn't, because that often they just couldn't throw the ball. This is a 6'6", former 4-star recruit, coming from Mississippi State, started at Alabama. I think Burmeister is going to really open up Tyrell Shavers, really start pushing the ball downfield, something San Diego State could not do at all. And, we know what this defense is going to be. It's been nasty every year. They lose Cameron Thomas. One thing you didn't even mention, Breeze, about Tavai and Cooper McDonald coming over is they came over to join their brothers, who are probably the two best players already on this defense. So I love that fact, family connection. I think that's super fun. I think they're going to love playing together. This defense is going to be exactly what it's always been. I do like the over, and I hate San Diego State, but I'm taking over 7.5, and I love the new Snapdragon Stadium. I think it's going to be awesome having that right downtown. I think I'm all in on the Aztecs this year, and I'm usually not. Also, I think, not even joking, like, has there ever been a team in the country where losing their punter is significantly more important than the fact that they lost their quarterback? Like, they lost the two quarterbacks. Who cares? They lost their punter. That's an issue.
Matt Ariza, you'll always be number one in our hearts. And Mrs. Ariza, if you're still listening, appreciate it. Tell a friend, tell an enemy, all that good stuff. San Jose State, 20-1 to win the Mountain West, 6.5 wins as a win total, -130 juice to the under, 101st S&P plus projection on offense, 59th defense. Cordero comes in from Hawaii, rows his boat to the mainland. Can he be an established quarterback for him? Joining him, Elijah Cooks, the Nevada transfer, 9 starters back from a pretty solid defense last year that was really good at stuffing the run. They were 5-4 last year. They looked like a bowl team out in the Mountain West. They lose their last 3 games. Really not that competitive in those 3. They arguably have the best defensive line in the conference, which is interesting in terms of their overall talent. And then when you look at the start to the season, I think it's critical for them to get off to a 2-1 start. They get Portland State, they get Auburn, then a bye week, then they play a Western Michigan team who potentially could give them some issues when Western Michigan has the ball. I don't know, 6.5 feels right. I feel like this is a bowl team, so it's probably a pass for me. But Cordero, to me, having watched him at Hawaii, everything that went wrong with Todd Graham's regime, there's still certainly the flashes. He had a strong arm. He was a very solid runner as a dual threat. So can they put it all together for a San Jose State team that 2 years ago was a darling? You don't even have to look that far back to see them put it all together. So I'll start with you, Ianniello. What are your thoughts on the Spartans here, maybe rekindling a little of that 2020 magic?
I don't want to tease anything what's coming next, but I did see a certain play come in the Action Network app from a certain Collin Wilson that scares the hell out of me. So I may back off my take. Anyone who listens to the podcast last year knows I hate Chevon Cordero. He stinks. He's so inaccurate. He's so bad at throwing footballs. He completed like 50% of his passes last year, 17 touchdowns, 11 picks. He was so bad. And you can maybe chalk it up to Todd Graham, but I just hate him and I cannot back him. And, they took a dive last year. They're almost what I'm worried about Utah State is that magical run the year before was so like, why are they this good? But they just always seem to win. And it was so lucky. And then they just absolutely went to shit the next year. But anyway, this is not about Utah State. So I just don't like them. I don't think they're that good. I think, they lose 3 offensive linemen. Their offense was so bad last year. And I don't see how it gets better with Cordero. I'm sure Colin hates Nick Starkel as an Arkansas guy, but I don't think Cordero was better than Starkel. So the defense should still be fine. So that will help them. Cade Hall's back, Kyle Harmon's back. So that'll help them. But this offense, I think, is just going to be really bad again. So I like that.
Yeah, and I can talk to the Starkel thing a little bit. The reason why Starkel was so good when he first got there is because of quarterback coach Ryan Gunderson, who left CLA last year, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson had the best year of his career for the Bruins, and I think it was all because of quarterback play. So that's why there was a little bit of a dip in what Starkel did. Let's fast forward to this year. I mean, this is the highest TARP number on offense and defense from transfer portal and a returning production, 82% on offense, 76% on defense. Nobody in the entire Mountain West is as high as them. So they got a massive power rating boost for me. And then when you go past that, yes, they do play, in their division at Fresno, at San Diego State, but there's no Boise and there's no Air Force from the Mountain on this schedule. That makes this one of the easier schedules in the entire conference. They're at Utah State, after San Diego State. I think the problem that I have with the schedule is that they play 10 consecutive games. Their bye week is on September 17th. What athletic director or who the hell set that up? I don't know why you're having bye weeks even though you do, have some pretty easy games like Nevada on October 29th. But listen, I love Siobhan Cordero. This is a guy that's made Cole McDonald sit down. Anybody that can seat Cole McDonald on the bench and show, what he's got. I like him. And I do think a lot of that was Todd Graham, because the strength of Siobhan Cordero was really his legs and his running game. And, he just got confused on whether he was allowed to leave the pocket or not. The offensive line returns just 50% of their snaps. That's going to allow Cordero to actually get outside the tackles and make something happen. They return over 80% of their passing yards, their rushing yards, and they're going to be heavy favorites early. Portland State, Western Michigan, New Mexico State. They're going to be comfortable favorites over UNLV, Nevada, Hawaii. Then there's a handful of coin flip games. So tell me why this is at 6.5. Don't gasp, guys. Don't gasp. I've got this win total at 9.2. That is 2 wins. That is 2 wins higher than that is 2 wins. That is 2 wins higher than SP Plus at 7.2. So I have shed 2 dimes over 6.5 plus 115. I don't expect it to be plus 115 anymore. But look at the schedule. There are 6 games on this schedule where they are comfortable favorites. Can they win the Mountain West? Probably not, going to Fresno and San Diego State. But there are 6 easy to mid-range, comfortable, more than one possession wins on this schedule. So I need one coin flip. It's going to happen. Over 6.5.
I think I just need to hand this to you through the computer. I think you just need to put the helmet on. It's
Collin, you're much smarter. You are much smarter than me, but that is 9 wins is insane.
Have you? I'm sorry. Have you gone and looked at Brent Brennan's against the spread record since he's gotten there? He's fantastic. He's an amazing coach. This guy has made something out of absolutely nothing, and I don't know how he's still
Cordero is nothing. Cordero is nothing.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll do it again.
All right.
Before the whole show goes off the rails, one follow-up question, because I'm not familiar with the construction progress on their campus. I know they were playing in that like half carved out stadium / parking lot last year. Do you know where they're at with that? Are they like 75%? Are there going to be fans on both sides of the field?
No, I think there's going to be fans on the side of the field. And then I'll throw a shout out to the Matrix Casino right next to it. It's the worst casino in the state of California.
All right. See, that's why we go to Collin, because he's got deep cut tidbits like that. All right. We got 3 teams left. Spoiler alert, they're not very good. Nevada, 50-1 to win the Mountain West, 4.5 wins as their win total, 121st projection on offense, 103rd on defense. They have 6 returning starters. Not on offense or defense, total. They have 6 returning starters. This team, I mean, I made the reference earlier in terms of teams getting gutted by the portal, Wyoming having so many players leave. 45 players exited this roster, 45, 33 of which still had eligibility remaining. Now, Ken Wilson takes over for Norvell. Ken Wilson has been a football coach as long as I've been alive. He was a GA at North Central College, D3 in Illinois in 1986. This is his first head coaching job. I'm not trying to throw dirt on this guy's grave before he coaches a single game, but there's a reason why he got this job. It's because he's a Nevada lifer. He's been an assistant in the program for over 20 years, but he's totally screwed in this spot. This is such a bad roster to walk into, whether it's Nate Cox or Shane Illingworth, doesn't matter. They're going to get by probably. You know what? Actually, they're not going to get by New Mexico State. They're going to be in a dogfight. They're going to lose. Incarnate Word, that's a win, sure. But after that, they're facing Iowa, Air Force. These are not just going to be losses. These are going to be absolute gutting. They're going to make Iowa look like a high-flying offense. This team is in huge trouble. 4.5 is I'm going to have to start titling this the Arkansas State underplay of the season. This doesn't make any sense. I'm going under on Nevada. Anyone, I think just to balance that, Ianniello, do you have them projected for 7 wins this year? Just trying to trying to balance out the pod. What are your thoughts on the Wolfpack?
No, they're gonna be bad, and I'm saving my Arkansas State under of the conference for the next team we're gonna talk about. But yeah, they lost everybody, and I will say, I know you kind of poo-pooed over Ken Wilson. Shame on you. Nevada fans do seem super excited about him. He is a Nevada lifer. He was an assistant coach there for 19 years, 2 different stints. In between that, he was the associate AD. So he was the Oregon defensive coordinator last year. So I will say it does seem like Nevada are very excited about him. So they're going to suck, but I'm going to try to be positive. They probably have the best kicker in the conference. So
I'll go ahead and tee this up for you, Collin. Who had a better roster? Who had a better roster going into the season, this Nevada roster or the Texas State Fighting Armadillos in the 1991 movie Necessary Roughness?
Well, they had the best kicker by far in the history of college football. So I'm going to
Correct
leave it
answer.
at that.
Kathy Ireland's, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, listen, guys, this is the biggest underplay in the entire conference of the entire podcast. If you have a deliverable, find a 5 and bet the under. And I could go through the schedule and I could bore you with TARP numbers. I could bore you with a ton of shit, a lot of analytics. But let me just be honest. Ken Wilson wants to run the ball in a place where all they've done lately is pass the ball. The new offensive coordinator is Derek Sage. He was at UCLA. That's a team that loved lining up multiple running backs, play action to the tight end. There is nothing about running go routes in this offense that is coming up. So we're getting a complete scheme change. I believe their high pace offense, they were 31st in seconds per play last year. I bet you they're about 120th this year. It's just going to be a complete change on both sides of the ball. Not only is Jay Norvell gone, he took all the players via transfer portal. Non-scholarship players in the 2 deep on defense, under 5. I don't know how odds makers are setting that number. I've hit it a few times. The juice is moving. I guarantee by the time we kick off, it is not going to be 5. Go grab it.
All right, moving on to the bottom of the barrel here in the Mountain West Division. UNLV 100-1 to win the whole thing, 4.5 as their win total, minus 130 to the under. The projection on offense is pretty ugly, 114th. Doesn't get much better on defense, 94th. Listen, they were 2-10 last year, but they were 2-2 down the stretch, so you can look at that in a positive light. They threw a scare into San Diego State. Harrison Bailey walks through the door. I know they've been through this many times, had their heart broken by the transfer portal and this savior quarterback that's supposed to come in. Big kid, big arm, got kind of a raw deal at Tennessee, potentially. He could have gone a lot of places, a lot of big name programs, but he's here at UNLV. They have a lot of returning experience from a defense that could crawl their way into the 80s in major metrics. I think that's reasonable. The offensive line also went from god awful in 2020 to just regular bad last year. And they returned 4 starters there. Maybe they're okay. They grab Idaho State, North Texas, and New Mexico at home. Could be 3 wins. Still looking at 4.5 as the win total. So where did they get the rest of those? You could also look optimistically. Utah State, Texas, San Antonio, and San Diego State, all close losses last year. So are they on the cusp? Has Arroyo, positioned them to turn the corner with great facilities? Obviously, their stadium is gorgeous. They should be, on the rise. But this season, they got to get to at least 5 or 6 wins to build on that positive momentum. I'll kick it to you first, Ianniello. You were teasing this. Is this one of your big underplays?
It's not, actually.
Oh, okay. Here we go. So there is some optimism.
I'm bullish on UNLV. I don't know that I can convince myself to bet their over, but I would do it before I'd bet the under. And they're definitely a team I'm going to pick spots to bet this year. Maybe I'm a sucker. I am high on Harrison Bailey. He, depending on where you look, Rivals had him as a 5-star. Rivals had him as the second quarterback in the country. They had him above CJ Stroud. And sure, you can say that was probably wrong, but okay, 24/7 had him 3rd right behind CJ Stroud. And even I do think he kind of got screwed at Tennessee because Jeremy Pruitt kept trotting out Jarrett Garantano for God knows what reason. And when he did play Harrison Bailey, he completed 70% of his passes in just 6 games. He looked good. I watched some of his games where he got in, and I thought he threw the ball well. And, even if Harrison Bailey doesn't pan out, Cameron Friel was the Mountain West Freshman of the Year last year. Doug Brumfield is still there too. So they have a deep room. They have Kyle Williams was the receiver who was the 2020 Mountain West Freshman of the Year. He was the leading receiver last year. They bring in Ricky White, who was a transfer from Michigan State. He was Harrison Bailey's high school teammate. And he was actually pretty good at Michigan State. He torched, I think he had like 200 yards against Michigan last year. So I do kind of like the moves they've made on offense. And yeah, they were bad last year, but I don't know. I feel like if you watch them, they were friskier than we thought they'd be. And that sounds like a nice way of saying they were bad, but they were. And the defense was bad. But if they can just improve on offense, as bad as this Mountain West is, there's going to be toss-up games between, Nevada, Hawaii. Like, these are games that are winnable now that maybe we didn't think would be. I don't know that I'm going to play it, but I'm probably going to bet them in like those games. I do.
I'm going and tee this up for Collin with going to the Wayback Machine for the trivia question. Do you know the last bowl game that UNLV won, Collin?
Arkansas. I don't even have to look. I already know because
That was me and Calabrese.
I was just discussing it the other day. They won the 2000 Las Vegas Bowl against Arkansas, and then they opened up in Little Rock in 2001 against Houston Nutt, and Arkansas beat them. And I believe their head coach at the time refused to get on the bus. Long story for later. Things that you learn in media days go a long ways, and I can't podcast about it. Now, I will say that conversation happened with the guy that's the executive director of the Las Vegas Bowl, and I was promised to get on the field and pull the lever on the Rebel Roller. So I'm just going to say, bucket list, have kids, greatest moment of my life, Rebel Roller is going to be right there with it if I can get on that field and pull it. Now, listen, the reason UNLV is never going to be able to get over the hump is because of their head coach, Marcus Arroyo. And I don't want to go down the list of all of the things that he does that are bad. I'll just say Justin Herbert was never allowed to throw in standard downs. He was never allowed to throw on first down. He was never allowed to throw on second down. He was only allowed to throw on third down. You have a generational talent, and you neutered him. And Marcus Arroyo is a guy I will never bet on to go over a win total. And the only time I was betting on them last year is because Doug Brumfield was in the game, and he could do things with his legs that Marcus Arroyo can't control. So, UNLV is pesky, but they're held back by the guy that's calling everything.
I think I like to think that I stoked the fire a little bit there with the Arkansas reference, but you did not disappoint. I always like when we can disagree a bit here. This last one, hopefully we don't all pile on the poor Rainbow Warriors, but we're going to finish out the pod with why also somehow 100-1 should be 500-1. Their win total is 4, minus 130 to the over 107th projection on offense, 122nd on defense. All right, let's start with the warm and fuzzies. Welcome home, Timmy Chang. You're back where you belong. They're playing in their little bandbox. I think it's 9,000 seats, the Clarence T.C. Ching Complex. That's adorable. Maybe they could, fill that up for a game or two. But when you start to look at the personnel, it's going to take a new quarterback, new system, new skill position players. Dedrick Parson is the only thing they have going on offense. He's a hard runner. He's probably going to put up some decent numbers, total offense. And the opener in week 0, they're playing Vandy. Should be a pillow fight. Maybe they can get a win there. After that, they draw Western Kentucky and Duquesne on the island. So, maybe if just everything goes right and they get the turnover luck in their favor, they could steal 2 or 3 wins early on. But after that, I think they're going to revert to some of the bad Hawaii teams of years past, where when they go to the mainland, they just get absolutely slaughtered. I'm going to stay away from this. I've always had a soft spot for Hawaii. I love to play them when they're on the up and up. This team it's going to take a while. It's going to take the transfer portal. It's going to take, convincing some of the homegrown talent in the state of Hawaii to, take one for the team and play for the Rainbow Warriors. It's going to take multiple years to get this in the right place. So it's a stay away from me here. What are your thoughts on Hawaii? Let's start with you, Ianniello.
This is the Arkansas State Rainbow Warriors. They suck. And I love Timmy Chang, and by the way, I don't think there's a team in the country, and it seems like if you especially on Twitter, the whole country feels this way. Is there a team in the country that your brain just can't get off? When you see Hawaii, you think Timmy Chang and Cole Brennan. Everyone bets them like it's still 2006 because they've been bad for a few years now, and they're going to be really bad. Their offense lost everybody. 8 of their top 10 tacklers are gone. I love you, Timmy, but this season is going to be brutal. I already bet they're under. I bet it at 4.5. They're still playing in a practice facility. They're going to have 100 people there. They have, obviously they have a little bit of home field advantage because of the travel, but they have no home field advantage. They brought in Eastern Washington's offensive coordinator. Timmy Chang was Nevada's tight end coach. He's not exactly the most. He's another one you talked about. Nevada. If Timmy Chang wasn't, nasty as a quarterback, he ain't getting this job. So I love him, but they're going to be that, and I love the under.
Yeah, one of the worst home field advantages in all of college football. I put out a piece every year where I look at the last 10 years of you're against the spread at home, which is how odds makers should give you home field advantage. And Hawaii is absolutely the worst. They have not been covering the spread at home over the last 10 years. And we'll see what they do in their new stadium, but it's just not an advantage. You would think so with teams flying out there. We need a betting deliverable here. So I'm not going to give you a win total. I'm not going to give you a conference future on Hawaii. I will say that on the Action Network, I'll have a piece coming out that looks at the week 0, week 1 biggest mismatches on the board. Hawaii and Vanderbilt are just that. Hawaii's offense only returns 20% of their passing yards from last year and only 44% of their offensive line snaps. Vanderbilt coming in with 72% of the pressures that they generated last year, 69% of their passes defensed from last year. Their defense is absolutely going to lock down Hawaii. There's just too much experience on the Vanderbilt side of the ball. There is a 6.5 out there. A lot of people have moved to 7. It's a number I power rate at 10, and I expect to float over 7 and get up that high. It may be the day of kick, but that's the number that I expect to float it up to. So get those 6.5s in on Vanderbilt as a play against Hawaii.
It is 6.5 at FanDuel, and it is locked in.
All right, we're going to go quick here. What is your favorite win total play on the board? And then not necessarily who you think is going to win the conference, but your favorite futures ticket that you're potentially holding to win the Mountain West. We'll start with you, Ianniello.
My favorite feature is Fresno State plus 300. All aboard the Bulldogs. It's one of those bets where, the number I wish was better, but I'm very confident they're going to win it. So I'm going to take it. Wyoming under 5. This team is going to be a nightmare. The vibes are bad. Team's bad. They got no players left. None of the fans are listening because they all transferred to better teams. So Wyoming under 5 is my best bet.
All right,
I do like Air Force a lot too. So
yeah, for me, there's no Mountain West futures. I mean, I did put a little bit on San Jose State, but I will just stick with best bet being over 6.5 at plus money. I would probably do it to minus 130. And it's just a really, really watered down schedule with 6 games. Are absolutely going to have no problems winning. And then 2 dimes down on Nevada under 5. I mean, this is exactly everything you look for in an under. Coaching change, scheme change, personnel change, transfer portal has depleted them. Everything that you could look for, and non-scholarship players in the 2 deep. You couldn't ask for anything more. Under 5, big on the Nevada Wolfpack.
I'll turn to the Mountain Division for both here. I'm all in on this Air Force team. So much continuity year over year. I love what they're able to do. They're able to protect their defense with the way that they, control the clock. And their defense was very good against the run last year. I think they're going to be in every single game this year, have an opportunity to get to double digits to potentially win the conference. It's going to be an interesting, conflict of styles in the title game, at least the one I'm projecting between Fresno State and Air Force. And then I know we get to talk up the G5 heroes, the players we love, the teams we love. Sometimes it feels good to just be a hater, and New Mexico is not good. And 2.5 is too many. So I'm going to go under there, and I'm going to get to root like hell for the Maine Black Bears in the opener. And that's going to be some exciting football for me. That's going to be one of the games where my wife's going to ask, hey, what are you watching? And then I have to lie just because it's too embarrassing to say out loud. So that's how we're going to end the podcast this week. This has been the Big Bets on Campus Pod, the Group of 5 Deep Dive edition. We are going to be back with more content coming out over the next week, August 8th. By then, we will have wrapped all of our G5 previews. We're going to have more from Collin, from Stuckey, from Brett McMurphy. So much content coming before the first ball is kicked off in week 0. So please be checking your feeds, refreshing, share, tell a friend, tell an enemy. You know how to do it. We want to get the good word spread. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and thanks for listening.